Welcome, YouTubers, to another episode in my Grammar Hero series. In today's video, I'm going to be working out the practice questions from the Arithmetic Reasoning subtest of the 8th full-length practice test on my website. In case this is your first time finding my YouTube channel, I quickly want to mention this. I recently created a small website called ASVABapp.com. There you can take 8 full-length AFQT practice tests, including this one. If for some reason you don't want to go to my website to take this practice test, you're more than welcome to work out these problems alongside me here on YouTube. In that case, I'd recommend that you pause the video after I read a question, attempt to work out the question on your own, and then resume playing the video to check your solution. As a reminder, you're not permitted to use a calculator or reference sheet on the ASVAB, so regardless of where you decide to take this practice test, try not to use any of those resources. Finally, I want to say this. In the description of this video, there's going to be timestamps that are going to be associated with each question. Next to the timestamp is going to be the topic that the question's testing, as well as a link to a video in which I discuss that topic in greater detail. So if at any point during this video you feel as if you need more help with one of these questions, just look in the description, and there you'll find links to additional resources. So all that being said, let's go ahead and get started with today's video. All right, so this first question says, in order to get a loan to purchase a house, Alexis has to come up with a down payment that is 1/5 of the home's price. If the house she wants to buy is being sold for $120,000, how much will her down payment be? All right, so in this case, the problem tells you exactly what operations to perform. 1/5 of the home's price. Well, 1/5 is a fraction, so we'll just go ahead and copy that down. Of. In math, of is always treated as multiplication, so this is 1/5 times of the home's price. Well, what is the home's price that she wants to buy? It's $120,000. All right, so by performing this simple arithmetic here, we'll know what her down payment's going to be. And as you can see, we're multiplying a fraction by a whole number. To make this a little bit easier, we can write 120,000 as a fraction by placing it over 1. And once we do that, we're just multiplying two fractions now, which means we're going to multiply straight across. So this is going to become 1 times 120,000 over 5 times 1. All right. 1 times anything is just itself, so 120,000 times 1 is just 120,000. And likewise, 5 times 1 is just 5. All right, so now this is just a division problem. This reads 120,000 divided by 5. So let's go ahead and perform that long division now. Again, 120,000 divided by 5. And believe it or not, this math is actually pretty easy to work out. You start by asking yourself, how many times does 5 go into 1? It doesn't. How many times does 5 go into 12 without going over? Well, 5 times 2 is 10, whereas 5 times 3 is 15. So of course this is going to be 2. Again, 5 times 2 is 10. Let's go ahead and do this subtraction. 12 minus 10 is 2. And in this case, you normally don't drop down all the zeros, but we can here because it will enable us to solve this problem rather quickly. We're going to ask ourselves, how many times does 5 go into 20? Well, we know that's 4 times. But that said, we have these 3 zeros hanging out here. 5 times 4,000 will be 20,000. So 5 times 4,000 is 20,000. And 20,000 minus 20,000 is nothing. So clearly, 120,000 divided by 5 is 24,000. And in light of that, we know that her down payment is going to be B, $24,000. All right, so that's that one. Again, you have to be good with multiplying fractions as well as doing long division to be successful on the ASVAB. And as you just saw, this first question was a very basic test of both of those things. All right, so that's that. All right, so number 2 here says, during the holidays, a watch that regularly sells for $500 is currently on sale for 15% off. What is the sale price of the watch? All right, so for these problems, I like to represent them algebraically. Again, we want to find the sales price of this watch, so I'm going to call that SP. And that's going to be the original price of the watch minus the discount amount times the original price of the watch. And we have both of these things. Again, the original price of the watch is $500. And likewise, our discount amount is right here. It's 15%. On the ASVAB, you're always going to express percents in decimal form. And the decimal form of 15% is 0.15. All right, so let's plug both of those things in. We have sales price equals original price, that's $500, minus discount amount, that's 0.15, times the original price, again, that's $500. And by doing this simple arithmetic right here, we'll figure out what the sales price of this watch is. First things first, we have to do 500 times 0.15. As you can see, I'm multiplying a whole number by a decimal. What you want to do here is you want to clear the decimal in 0.15 by shifting it to the right 2 times, such that this problem becomes 500 times 15 with no decimals. And once you work this out, you're going to take those 2 decimals that you shifted to the right here and shift them back into the left. So let's go ahead and work this out. 5 times 0 is 0, 5 times 0 is 0, 5 times 5 is 25. Before we start multiplication with this 1, we have to bring in 1 0 placeholder. 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 0 is 0, 1 times 5 is 5. All right, let's add these together. 0 plus 0 is 0, 0 plus 0 is 0, 5 plus 0 is 5, 5 plus 2 is 7. Let's not forget to bring our 2 decimals back in, 1, 2. So we can see that 0.15 times 500 is 75. So this becomes 500 minus 75. And you should be able to do that mentally. That's going to be 425. All right, so the sales price of this watch is 425. In case you couldn't do 500 minus 75 in your head, I'll go ahead and do it off to the side very quickly for you. Okay, we're doing 0 minus 5, which we can't do, so we're going to have to borrow to the left. There's a 0 there, so we can't borrow from that, so we're going to have to borrow one more time from this 5. This will become 4. This will become 10. Now we can borrow from the left. This will become 9. This will become 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 7 is 2. And 4 minus nothing is 4. Okay, so that's how we got $425. This is a very common question that shows up on the ASVAB, so make sure you know how to work out these problems. Again, I have a very popular video on my channel called Tax Tips, Discounts, Original Price, and Double Discounts. If you struggle with what I did here, please go and watch that video. A lot of people have mentioned that it's helped them tremendously. All right, so that's that one. All right, number 3 here says, if a 5-foot post casts a 15-foot shadow, and at the same time a nearby tree casts a 48-foot shadow, then how tall is the tree? All right, so for this one, it's going to be helpful to make a little sketch as to what's going on. Again, we have a post that's 5 feet tall, and according to the problem, we know it's casting a 15-foot shadow. Likewise, we're told that there's a tree nearby, and that tree cast a 48-foot shadow. But we don't know how tall it is. In fact, that's what the question's asking us to figure out. So I'm going to call that X feet tall. Well, it may not be obvious, but if you enclose these 2 figures, what you get is a pair of similar right triangles. And when you have a pair of similar figures, you can use a proportion to figure out what the missing value is. Again, what I'm going to do is write this proportion like this. The height of this tree versus the length of its shadow. So that's going to be 5 over 15 is equal to the height of this tree, which is X, compared to the length of its shadow, which we know is 48. All right, so now that we have our proportion set up, All we have to do is cross multiply and simplify accordingly. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is 15 times x, which is 15x, equals 5 times 48. All right. What I'm going to do here should help us avoid working this out fully. I'm going to divide both sides by 15 right now. And this becomes this. X equals 5 times 48 over 15. And now I can actually reduce this because 5 and 15 have a common factor of 5. So I can say 5 goes into 5 one time, whereas 5 goes into 15 3 times. So this becomes 48 over 3, which is much easier and quicker to work out. And again, as we've seen in this video already, we could read this as long division. In fact, we'd read it as 48 divided by 3. Some people could do that in their head, but that said, let's get practice doing long division here. We start by asking ourselves, how many times does 3 go into 4 without going over? That's 1 time, given that 3 times 1 is 3. 4 minus 3 is 1, and we drop down this 8. 3 goes into 18 6 times evenly, given that 3 times 6 is 18. 18 minus 18 is 0. So x in this case is 16 feet. In other words, the height of this tree is 16 feet. All right, so you should expect questions that are very similar to this one on the ASVAB. Make sure you know how to work with proportions as well as similar figures. All right, so that's that one. All right, so number 4 here says Anderson earns a monthly salary of $400 as well as a commission of $40 for every sale he makes. How many sales must he make to earn $2,000 in 1 month? All right, so we're going to have to translate this word problem into an algebraic expression, and it's not as difficult to do as you think. Again, we're told his monthly salary is $400. So no matter how many things he sells, he's always going to make $400. In addition to that monthly salary, he also has a commission of $40 for every sale he makes. So that's going to be plus 40. And we don't know how many sales he makes. And in math, when you're dealing with unknowns, you typically represent those with letter variables. And in this case, I'm going to let x refer to the number of sales he makes. And we want to know how many sales he has to make to earn $2,000 in total for the month. All right, so there's our algebraic expression. And now let's go ahead and solve it. First, we're going to subtract 400 from both sides. This crosses out here, leaving you with just 40x on this side. You should be able to do this mentally. 2,000 minus 400 is 1,600. That said, we can go through it very quickly. 0 minus 0 is 0. 0 minus 0 is 0. 4 minus 0, or 0 minus 4 we can't do, so we're going to have to borrow. This becomes 1, this becomes 10. 10 minus 4 is 6, and 1 minus nothing is 1. So that's how we got 1,600. All right, so now we're just solving for x. Again, that refers to the number of sales he has to make per month to make $2,000. So we'll divide both sides by 40 now to get x by itself. This says x equals 1,600 over 40. And at this point, you might be saying, well, that's pretty difficult to work out. But remember, we can cross out a pair of these corresponding zeros. So this becomes x equals 160 over 4. And let's think about it this way. What's 16 divided by 4? That's 4. And just bring down that 0. So x in this case is 40, which means he has to make 40 sales in order to make $2,000 in a month. All right, so that's that one. All right, so number 5 says, after becoming a 3-star general, Andrew's looking for a bigger square office. He found an office that has twice the area of his current square office. If the perimeter of his current office is 120 feet, how many square feet is his new office? All right, so there's a lot going on in this problem, so let's break it down piece by piece. The first thing that should jump out at you is the fact that his current office is in the shape of a square. And there's actually two references to that. He's looking for a bigger square office, and that has twice the area of his current square office. Okay, so in light of the fact we know his office is in the shape of a square, let's go ahead and make one of those. All right. And in addition, we know the perimeter of his current office is 120 feet. So we'll say P for perimeter equals 120. Well, what do we know about squares? In squares, all the sides are equal. So that side's equal to that side's equal to that side, and that side's equal to that side. So if I let this side be S, that means this side's S, and this side's S. The question here is, how do we find the area of his current office given its perimeter? Because once we find that area, we'll double it to find the area of his new office. So how are we going to do that? Well, you should know that to find the perimeter of a square, you do perimeter equals 4s. That is, you add up all the sides of a square. We know what P is. P is 120, so we can go ahead and replace P with 120. So this becomes 120 equals 4s. Now we're going to divide both sides by 4. This crosses out here, leaving you with s on this side. What is 120 divided by 4? Well, 12 divided by 4 is 3, and just bring down that 0. So s in this case is 30. So that means his office looks like this. It has sides of 30. All right. So now let's find the area of his current office. And again, the area of a square is given by the formula area equals sides squared. In this case, we know what its sides are. So this becomes area equals 30 squared. All right. And you should be able to do that in your head, but if you can't, you can always do it off to the side very quickly. 0 times 0 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. Bring down a 0 placeholder before you start multiplication with this 3. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 3 is 9. 900 plus nothing is 900. So the area of his current office is 900 square feet. And we know that his new office has twice the area of his current office. So his new office is going to be 900 times 2. 900 times 2 is 1,800. So the area of his new office is 1,800 square feet, which we can see is A. Let me stress this. You have to understand the relationship between perimeter and area to be successful on the ASVAB. It's not that difficult of a concept to grasp. And if it's helpful, you can always make some diagrams to work your way through it. All right, so that's that one. All right, so number 6 here says, at Hernando High, 1/8 of the class graduated with an A average, 1/2 had a B average, and the rest had a C average. Of 800 students graduated that year, how many of them had a C average? All right, so this problem is regarding fractions. And it's difficult because we're told 1/8 of the class had an A average, 1/2 had a B average, and the rest had a C average. We're not given the fraction of the class that had a C average. So that's the first thing we have to figure out. So I'm going to let this 1 represent the students graduating. And to find how many had a C average, we're going to subtract away the 1/8 who had an A average, as well as the 1/2 who had a B average. And by doing that, this will tell us what fraction of the class had a C average. All right, so let's work on this. So we're subtracting fractions as well as a whole number. The first thing I'm going to do is rewrite this 1 as a fraction, and I can do that by placing it over 1. So this becomes 1 over 1 minus 1 over 8 minus 1 over 2. Now we're subtracting nothing but fractions, and in order to do this, we actually have to rewrite these fractions such that they all have the same denominators. In this case, we have denominators of 1, 8, and 2. Well, all of those go into 8, so we can actually rewrite all of these such that they have a denominator of 8. To write 1 as 8, we would multiply it by 8. And we also have to do that to its numerator. 1 times 8 is 8. 1 times 8 is 8. All right. 8's already, or 1/8 already has a denominator of 8, so we can just copy that one down as is. To write 2 as 8, we would multiply it by 4. And we also have to do that to its numerator. 2 times 4 is 8. 1 times 4 is 4. All right, so now that these fractions all have the same denominators, we can go ahead and combine them like this. 8 minus 1 minus 4 all over 8. All right, this is the same as 8 minus 5 over 8. 8 minus 5 is 3, so this is 3/8. So we know that 3/8 of the class that graduated had a C average. Now the question is, what is 3/8 of 800 students? So that's going to be 3/8 times 800. This is actually pretty easy to work out. Again, we can express the whole number 800 as a fraction by placing it over 1. And now we can actually simplify this. 8 goes into 8 one time. 8 goes into 800 100 times. So this says 3 over 1. 3 over 1 is just 3 times 100 over 1. 100 over 1 is just 100. 3 times 100 is 300. So to answer this question, 3/8 of the class graduated with a C average, which is 300 students out of 800 students. So the answer to this one is D, 300. All right, so you have to know how to work with fractions for the ASVAB. If you look on my channel, I have a whole playlist dedicated to fractions, including word problems with fractions. So check that out if you need more help. But that said, you will see questions like this on the ASVAB. All right, so let me just stress this about number 7. I actually had a typo on my website. This used to say 6 yellow. It should have said 6 blue. So if you got this one wrong when you took the practice test, that's my bad. Occasionally I do make some small mistakes when I write these practice tests. They're few and far in between, but I just wanted to point out that this used to say 6 yellow on my website. I meant it to say 6 blue. All right, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and tackle this problem. It says the following colors of Skittles are placed in a bowl: 6 blue, 6 orange, 4 green, 4 red, and 10 yellow. If you close your eyes and randomly select one from the bowl, what is the probability that you select a yellow one? All right, so this question's testing your knowledge of basic probability. And if you look on my reference sheet, you'd see that I have this formula. Probability of A occurring is the desired outcome occurring over the total possible outcomes. All right, so let's go ahead and apply this to this problem. We want to know the probability of selecting a yellow Skittle. Well, how many yellow Skittles are there in the bowl? There's 10 of them. And how many Skittles are in the bowl in total? There's 6 blue, 6 orange, 4 green, 4 red, and 10 yellow. So by working out this arithmetic right here, we'll know what the probability of selecting a yellow Skittle is. This is 10 over, and this math is actually pretty easy to do. 6 plus 6 is 12. 12 plus 4 is 16. 16 plus 4 is 20. 20 plus 10 is 30. So this is 10 over 30. Again, we can cross out these corresponding zeros, so this becomes 1/3. And if we take a look at our answer choices, we can see they're all expressed as percents. Well, we should know that 1/3 is the same as 33.3% repeated. And that said, if you didn't know that, you can always treat this as long division by reading it as 1 divided by 3. And you ask yourself, how many times does 3 go into 1 without going over? It doesn't. So you have to add a couple of 0 placeholders here. And once we add that decimal, we have to bring it up here. Again, 3 did not go into 1, so we can actually put a 0 there to represent that. And now the question becomes, how many times does 3 go into 10 without going over? Well, that's going to be 3 times, given that 3 times 3 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. Drop down a 0. How many times does 3 go into 10 without going over? That's 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1. Drop down another 0. How many times does 3 go into 10? That's 3. And as you can see, this is just going to repeat over and over again. So 1/3 is the same as 0.333. Repeat it. And to convert a decimal into a percent, you simply multiply it by 100, which prompts you just to shift this decimal to the right according to how many zeros there are in 100. In 100, there's 2 zeros. So this becomes 1, 2, which is 33.3%. Repeat it. All right, so that's that one. Again, there was a mistake on my website. This should have said blue, not yellow. That's my bad. So if you got this one wrong, just bear in mind, if you selected D, you really probably got it right. So I apologize for that. All right, so number 8 here says, how many feet of a wire fence is necessary to enclose a garden that is square and has an area of 1,600 square feet? All right, so again, we're dealing with another square here, so let's go ahead and make one of those. And we know this square has an area of 1,600 feet. Well, again, we're dealing with the square, so we know all the sides are equal. So if this side's S, this side's S, this side's also S, and this side's S, how are we going to go from knowing the area of this garden to figuring out how many wire fence we need? Well, if you think about it, to fence in this square garden, we would add the length of fence we need for this side, plus the length of fence we need for this side, plus this side, plus this side. So in other words, we have to go from knowing the area of this garden to knowing its perimeter. So we're doing the opposite of what we saw in a previous problem. So how do you find the area of a square? Again, that's area equals side squared. We know what A is. It's 1,600. So let's go ahead and write that in. 1,600 equals S squared. Let's go ahead and take the square root of both sides. This crosses out here. What is the square root of 1,600? Do we know that? Should be 40. And let's just verify that. Again, if 40 times 40 is 1,600, then we know that's correct. 0 times 0 is 0. 4 times 0 is 0. Bring in a 0 placeholder before you start multiplication here. 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 4 is 16. 0 plus 1,600 is 1,600. So again, we know we're dealing with a square that has sides of 40. And again, now we're just finding its perimeter. To find the perimeter of a square, you do 4 times S. We know the length of the sides is 40, so this becomes 4 times 40. 4 times 40 is, well, 4 times 4 is 16, and just tack on that 0. So for this one, you'll need 160 feet of fence to enclose this square garden that has an area of 1,600 square feet. All right, so that's that one. All right, so number 9 here says the price of oranges in Michigan is $8 per pound. This is 250% of the cost of oranges per pound in Florida. How much do oranges cost per pound in Florida? All right, so for this one, the problem tells you exactly what to do. Again, the price of oranges in Michigan is $8 per pound. So let's just go ahead and represent that. And it says this cost of oranges in Michigan is, well, is always equal. So $8 is 250%. Again, as I've said in this video already, we're going to express percents in decimal form. The decimal form of 250% is 2.5. Of, in math, of is always multiplication. So this is 2.5 times the cost of oranges per pound in Florida. Well, that's an unknown value. And in math, we represent unknown values with variables. So I'm going to call that x. All right, so this problem becomes 8 equals 2.5 times x, which is just 2.5x. And clearly, we're going to be solving for x, which represents the cost per pound of oranges in Florida. So let's divide both sides by 2.5 now. This crosses out here, leaving you with x. And as you can see, x is 8 over 2.5. We're actually going to read that as long division, notably as 8 divided by 2.5. And now we're doing long division involving a whole number, notably 8, and a decimal, notably 2.5. The key to doing that is this. If the decimal's outside the division bracket, and it is in this case, you have to shift the decimal in that number to the right however many times you need to clear the decimal. So I'm going to have to shift the decimal in 2.5 one time to the right such that it becomes 25. And at the same time, I'm going to have to shift the decimal in 8 one time to the right. All right, so this becomes 80 divided by 25. And now we can proceed as we normally would. How many times does 25 go into 80 without going over? Well, 25 times 3 is 75, whereas 25 times 4 is 100. So this is going to be 3. 25 times 3 is 75. 80 minus 75 is 5. All right. And at this point, you're probably saying, well, 25 doesn't go into 5. So how are we going to proceed? Well, we're actually going to add a decimal now and a 0 placeholder, which will enable us to drop down this 0 now. And the question becomes, how many times does 25 go into 50? Of course, that's going to be 2 times. 2 times 25 is 50. 50 minus 50 is 0. So x in this case is 3.2. And we should realize that 3.2 is the same as $3.20. So the answer to this one is C, $3.20. All right, so that's that one. All right, so number 10 says, because of inflation, the cost of a tube of mint toothpaste increased from $2.50 to $2.80. What was the percent increase in the cost of a tube of mint toothpaste? All right, so whenever you're dealing with percent increase and percent decrease, you're always going to refer to the percent change formula. And if you look on my reference sheet, it says percent change is the new value minus the old value over the old value. By figuring that out, we'll know what the percent increase was in this case. So all we have to do is identify the new and old values, and as it happens, they're right next to each other. The old value was 250, and then it increased to 280. So 250s are old value, 280s are new value. So this becomes 280 minus 250 over 250. All right, this math's actually very easy to do in your head. 280 minus 250 is going to be 30, and this is over 250. And let me go ahead and work this out because sometimes people get upset when I don't work out decimals. Again, we have 280 minus 250. 0 minus 0 is 0. 8 minus 5 is 3. Drop down your decimal. 2 minus 2 is 0. Okay, so that's how I got 0.30 there. And now we just have to do this long division now. Again, this says 0.3, and I'm going to drop these zeros. We really don't need them. They're just making things more complicated. This says 0.3 divided by 2.5. All right, so as we've seen in this video already, we're working with decimals and long division. Again, if there's a decimal outside this division bracket, you have to shift that decimal to the right however many times to make it go away. So in this case, I'm going to have to shift the decimal in 2.5 one time to the right to make that 25. And at the same time, I'm going to have to shift the decimal in 0.3, a corresponding number of times. So this becomes 3 divided by 25. All right, so we start by asking ourselves, how many times does 25 go into 3? It doesn't, so I have to actually add this decimal back here and a couple of 0 placeholders. Once I add that decimal, I can bring it up here. And now I regard this as this. How many times does 25 go into 30? Again, 25 didn't go into 3, so I'll bring up a 0 there. How many times does 25 go into 30 without going over? That's 1 time. 25 times 1 is 25. 30 minus 25 is 5. Bring down this 0. How many times does 25 go into 50 without going over? That's 2 times. 25 times 2 is 50. 50 minus 50 is 0. All right, so we're done with this one. 0.3 divided by 2.5 is 0.12. Again, we want to express this as a percent, so we're going to multiply it by 100, which just means we're going to take its decimal and shift it 2 times to the right. So this becomes 12%, which we can see as answer choice B in this case. All right, so that's that one. Again, you do have to know about percent change for the ASVAB, so make sure you understand this formula. It's actually very easy to use once you get the hang of it. All right, so number 11 says Darren is touring New York City with his family. They want to visit the Empire State Building, Central Park, and Times Square before their dinner reservations at 7:15 p.m. They want to spend 1 hour and 45 minutes at the Empire State Building, 2 hours and 15 minutes in Central Park, and 1 hour and 15 minutes in Times Square. What is the latest time Darren's family can start their tour in order to make it to dinner on time? All right, so their dinner starts at 7:15 p.m. and before dinner, they want to visit these 3 places. So what we're going to do is total up the amount of time they spend visiting these 3 places, and then we'll subtract that from the time their dinner reservations start. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, according to the problem, they're going to spend 1 hour and 45 minutes at the Empire State Building. And when I add these up, I'm going to keep my hours and minutes separated like this. 2 hours and 15 minutes in Central Park. And finally, another hour and 15 minutes in Times Square. All right, let's add up the hours. This is actually pretty easy to do. 2 plus 1 is 3 plus 1 is 4. Now, as we add up these minutes, we have to keep in mind that there are 60 minutes in every hour. So as we add this up, once we reach 60 minutes, I'm going to count that as an hour, and I'm going to move it to the hour column. So right here, we have 45 plus 15. So that's 60 minutes, which is 1 hour. So I'm going to take that hour, and I'm going to add it over here. So instead of being 4 hours, this is going to be 5 hours. So we took care of those two, and now we're just left with 15 minutes over there. So in total, they're going to spend 5 hours and 15 minutes on this tour. So we have to go from 7:15 back 5 hours and 15 minutes. So let's go ahead and do that. That's actually pretty easy to do. If we go from 7:15 to 6:15 p.m., that's 1 hour. 6:15 to 5:15, that's 2 hours. 5:15 to 4:15 is 3 hours. 4:15 to 3:15 is 4 hours. And 3:15 to 2:15 is 5 hours. And then we have to go back 15 minutes now. So that's going to be from 2:15 to 2 o'clock. All right, so the latest that they can start their tour of New York City is 2 p.m. To make it to dinner on time. All right, so that's that one. You do have to be able to tell time for the ASVAB. You will see at least one question involving time like this, so make sure you can tell time. All right, so number 12 says Cindy's scores on her first 4 history tests were 94, 85, 90, and 95. In order to get a B plus in the class, she must have an average of at least 88%. What score must she make on her FIT test to get a B plus in the class? All right, so this question is a test of your ability to find a missing value in an average. So again, if it's helpful, you can always write out to find the average of something, you sum all of your data points and you divide by how many data points there are. Well, in this case, we're told what our average has to be. We want our average to be 88. So in place of average here, I'm going to put 88. What is the sum of the data points? Well, that's going to be the sum of her test scores in this case. So that's going to be 94 plus 85 plus 90 plus 95. And then we also have to include the unknown score she gets on her FIT test. So that's going to be X. All right. We're going to divide that by how many tests she took. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By solving this equation for X, we'll know what her score on her FIT test, which I called X, has to be for her to have an average of 88%. All right, so let's go ahead and work on solving this. First things first, let's multiply both sides by 5. This will cross out here, and this leaves you with 94 plus 85 plus 90 plus 95 plus x. All right, and then we have 5 times 88, which I can't do in my head, so I'll go ahead and work out over here. 8 times 5 is 40, so bring down a 0 and carry a 4. 8 times 5 is 40 plus 4 is 44, so this is 440. Again, what we want to do is combine all these values before we move them over here. And the best way to do that, in my opinion, is to add them vertically. So we have 95, 90, 85, and 94. This is where most people would make a mistake. So take your time as you do this. 5 plus 5 is 10. 10 plus 4 is 14. So drop down a 4 and carry a 1. If you think about this like this, again, let's do 8 plus 1, that's 9. This is 9 times 4, which is 36. All right, so this becomes 440 equals 364 plus x. Again, we're just solving for x now, so let's just subtract 364 from both sides. This crosses out, leaving you with just x. Which we'll go ahead and work out. 0 minus 4 we can't do, so we're going to have to borrow. This is going to become 3. This will become 10. 10 minus 4 is 6. 3 minus 6 we can't do, so we have to borrow. This becomes 3. This becomes 13. 13 minus 6 is 7, and 3 minus 3 is 0. So x in this case is 76. In math, it's customary to write the variable for which you solved on the left. So again, she needs a 76 on her 5th test in order to have a B+ average in this class. All right, so that's that one. This is a very common question that shows up on the ASVAB, so make sure you understood what I did here. If you look through all my practice tests, you'll see that I include questions that are similar to this one. So again, make sure you can work out problems like this. All right, so 13 here says, how many 10-pound bags of oranges can be made from 1,200 oranges if each orange weighs 1/4 pound? All right, so to figure this one out, we're first going to have to figure out how much these 1,200 oranges weigh in total. Again, we have 1,200 oranges, and they each weigh 1/4 pound. So that's going to be 1,200 times 1/4. All right, so that's actually pretty easy to work out. Again, we can write 1,200 as a fraction by placing it over 1. And let's go ahead and simplify this. Again, I can say 4 goes into 4 one time, 4 goes into 12 3 times, and just bring up these zeros. So this becomes 300 over 1 times 1 over 1. 300 over 1 is just 300. 1 over 1 is just 1, so this is 300 times 1, which is 300. So we have 300 pounds of oranges. Again, we have 300 pounds of oranges, and we're making 10-pound bags from those oranges, so we're going to do 300 divided by 10. Cross out these corresponding zeros here. This becomes 30 over 1. 30 divided by 1 is just 30. So the answer to this is we can make 30 10-pound bags of oranges if we have 1,200 oranges and they each weigh 1/4 pound. All right, so that's that one. It's going to be B. All right, so 14 says, together a husband and wife earn $225,000 per year. If one of them earns $75,000 more than the other, what is the amount of the smaller income? All right, so for this one, we're going to have to represent this problem algebraically. Again, we're dealing with incomes of 2 people. So I'm going to represent one of their unknown incomes with the variable x. And according to the problem, we know that one of them earns $75,000 more than the other. So if one of them earns x for the income, that means the other one earns x plus 75,000. And what's more, we know combined they make $225,000 per year. All right, so we just expressed this problem algebraically. Again, if it's helpful, you can say this is one person's income. This is the other person's income. Clearly, x is going to be smaller than x plus 75,000. So at the end of the day, we're just solving for x here. But before we do that, let's combine like terms. We have x and x, which is 2x, plus 75,000 equals 225,000. Again, we're solving for x, so let's subtract 75,000 from both sides now. And I'm going to work this out since this one's not that easy to do. 75,000 minus 75,000 is nothing, so we're just left with 2x over here. Let's work this out. 0 minus 0 is 0, 0 minus 0 is 0, 0 minus 0 is 0, 5 minus 5 is 0. 2 minus 7 we can't do, so we're going to have to borrow. This is going to become 1, and this will become 12. 12 minus 7 is going to be 5, and 1 minus nothing is 1. So this is 2x equals 150,000. Again, let's divide both sides by 2 now. This crosses out, and this leaves you with x equals 150,000 divided by 2. Well, many of you could do that mentally and say that's going to be 75,000. But if you couldn't, we can always treat this as long division by reading it as 150,000 divided by 2. And we would start by asking ourselves, how many times does 2 go into 1 without going over? It doesn't. How many times does 2 go into 15 without going over? It's going to be 7 times, given that 2 times 7 is 14. 15 minus 14 is 1. Let's go ahead and bring down all these zeros now, because we can actually solve this one at this point. How many times does 2 go into 10? That's going to be 5 times. Again, 2 times 5 is 10. But again, just bring up these 3 zeros, and we can say 2 times 5,000 is 10,000. So we can see there's going to be no remainder there. So x in this case is 75,000. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this problem, x is clearly the smaller income, so we know the answer to this one is 75,000A. All right, so that's that one. Again, you have to get comfortable writing algebraic expressions to mirror what the question's asking. Questions like this are in many of my videos, so make sure you can do this. All right, so number 15 here says a gas truck can fill a gas tank at a rate of 480 cubic inches per minute. If a rectangular gas tank is 10 inches long, 8 inches wide, and 12 inches tall, how long will it take the gas truck to fill this tank? All right, so there's a big clue in this problem that's going to tell you how to get started. It's right here. The gas truck can fill a gas tank at a rate of 480 cubic inches per minute. Well, anything cubed is in regard to volume. So for this one, we know we're going to be finding the volume of this rectangular gas tank and then dividing that by the rate by which this gas truck fills up gas tanks. So let's find the volume of this rectangular gas tank. Again, we're actually finding the volume of a rectangular prism. And if you look on my formula sheet, you'll see that's simply length times width times height. And we have those three things. We're told that this gas tank is 10 inches long, so that's our length, 8 inches wide, so that's our width, and 12 inches tall, so that's our height. So let's plug those in. Volume of our gas tank is going to be 10 times 8 times 12. All right, so let's work this out. I'm going to do this like this. 10 times 12 is 120, so this becomes 120 times 8. And so as not to make a mistake here, I'll actually work this off to the side. We have 120 times 8. 8 times 0 is 0. 2 times 8 is 16, carry a 1. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So this is 960. So the volume of our gas tank is 960 cubic inches. All right, so let's figure out how long it's going to take this gas truck to fill up this gas tank. So we're going to do 960 cubic inches. I don't know why I wrote an M there. Divided by the rate at which this gas truck fills up gas tanks, which is 480 cubic inches. And we can actually start crossing things out. First of all, these units get crossed out, and then we can cross out these corresponding zeros. So this becomes 96 over 48. Well, if you know your times tables, this problem is actually very easy because 96 and 48 are both divisible by 12. 96 divided by 12 is 8. and 48 divided by 12 is 4. So this becomes 8 over 4, which is 2. All right, so in other words, it's going to take this gas truck 2 minutes to fill up our gas tank. All right, so that's that one. Again, you have to know your times tables because it will make difficult math much more simple and easy to work out. And that's what you want on test day. You don't want to be stuck working, doing long division. When possible, you want to reduce. And if you know your times tables, you should be able to do that pretty quickly and easily in most cases. All right, 16 says a train goes 4 times as fast downhill as it can go uphill, and 3/4 as fast uphill as it can go on level ground. If it goes 120 miles per hour downhill, how long will it take to travel 120 miles on level ground? All right, we should realize that this question is in reference to distance, rate, and time. Again, the formula D equals R times T describes the relationship between distance, rate, and time. It says distance is equal to rate times time. And the way this formula works is like this. If you're given at least 2 of these variables, you can find the third one. So if you're given rate and time, you can find distance. If you're given distance and time, you can find rate. If you're given distance and rate, you can find time. All right, so let's reread this problem and see what's given. If it goes 120 miles per hour downhill, well, that's a rate. Again, miles per hour is a rate. How long will it take to travel? How long is in reference to time? 120 miles. Well, 120 miles is in reference to distance. So let's start plugging those things into this formula. Again, we know D is 120 equals R. Let's think about this for a second. We're told the rate of the train as it goes downhill, but we're trying to figure out how long it takes to go on level ground. So we actually can't use this rate as it is. We have to actually convert this 120 miles per hour downhill to be a rate in terms of going across level ground. So I'm going to put a little asterisk next to this to indicate we're going to have to make a conversion here. And then, of course, we're solving for t. All right, so let's make this conversion so we can quickly figure this one out. Again, in this problem, we're given information about 3 different types of terrain: level ground, uphill, and then downhill. And for the most part, these are unknown. So I'm going to call level ground X. So the train goes X miles per hour across level ground. According to the problem, it goes 3/4 as fast uphill as it goes across level ground. So that would be 3/4 of X. And then finally, we know it goes 4 times as fast downhill as it can go uphill. So that's 4 times 3/4 X. And let's simplify this very quickly. Let me do that off to the side down here so this looks nice and neat. We have 4 times 3/4. Again, I can write 4 as a fraction by placing it over 1. 4 times 3 is 12. 1 times 4 is 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So this downhill is actually 3x. So there are our 3 rates of speed: 3x, 3/4 x, and just x. All right, so now we got to convert this miles per hour downhill to be miles per hour across level ground. How can we do that? Well, we can write 3x equals 120. Again, this 3x refers to the speed downhill. 120 is the speed downhill. But if we solve for x here, we'll know the speed across level ground. So let's go ahead and do that. We can divide both sides by 3. This becomes x equals, what's 12 divided by 3? That's 4, and just drop down this 0. So our rate across level ground is actually 40 miles per hour. So that's actually the real rate we're going to use. This becomes 120 equals 40 times t. Again, we're solving for t, so let's divide both sides by 40. This crosses out here, leaving you with just t on this side. We can cross out these corresponding zeros. 12 divided by 4 is 3, so t in this case is 3. And t is always in reference to hours, so this is 3 hours. All right, so the answer to this one is A, 3 hours. Very difficult problem, and you'll notice that in all my videos, I include a question about distance, rate, and time That's a very common question on the ASVAB. There's multiple ways to test your knowledge of distance, rate, and time. So make sure you can handle questions like this for the test. If you can, you'll do great. All right, so that is it for today's video. I hope you found it helpful. As always, you're more than welcome to leave feedback in the comment section below. If you like the content I'm creating, please consider subscribing to my channel. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and cut you loose. Konnichiwa.